initiator who's going to speak is Nkosi Anderson from Union Theological. Yeah. Come on now.
Good evening, friends.
Hey, what's up?
We give Mrs. Young, Mr. Hayward, and Joshua another round of applause. And could we just, for 5 seconds, just have a moment of silence for Mrs. Young's son, Mr. Hayward's son, and Joshua's uncle. Thank you. I was just hearing them speak. I was just moved to ask that. So thank you very much. God bless you all. It's great to see everybody here tonight. It's a packed house. This is awesome. Carl asked me to address this question of why I'm doing this. So here's why I'm doing this. We need to be very clear. Unjust police terror against people of color has always been a part of the very fabric of this nation.
Yeah.
It's always been.
That's right.
Now check this out. Here's an example. In 1903, W.E.B. Du Bois published his classic text, The Souls of Black Folks. And in the book, he has a chapter entitled On the Sons of Master and Man, where he looks at the actual relations of blacks and whites in the South at that time. He examines their physical proximity, their economic relations, their social interactions, etc. Now, at one point in the chapter, he explores the question of black crime in the years following emancipation. So in 1903, he writes this, and I want to read it. He says, "The police system of the South was originally designed to keep track of all Negroes, not simply criminals. And when the Negroes were freed and the whole South was convinced of the impossibility of free Negro labor, the first and almost universal device was to use the courts as a means of re-enslaving the blacks."
Yeah.
He goes on, "It was not then a question of crime, but rather one of color, that settled a man's conviction on almost any charge. Thus, Negroes came to look upon the courts as instruments of injustice and oppression, and upon those convicted in them as martyrs and victims." This is 1903 that Du Bois is writing this. And so let me just kind of highlight some things that jump out to me from that passage. One, we see him talking about the criminalization of a race of people. We see him talking about, two, an inherently racist and unjust justice system. And thirdly, we see him highlighting an economic system that cannot provide for the masses of people. Does this sound familiar? And so unjust police terror targeted against black and brown people is nothing new. It has always been a tool of oppression. It has always been used to preserve the social hierarchy through racial caste, slavery, Jim Crow segregation, mass incarceration.
Yeah.
It has always guarded the material interest of the propertied class. And so we see here police terror levied against poor people across racial lines. And unjust police terror has always been just that. A public manifestation of violence intended to frighten, control, maim, kill, and send a message that any form of fight back will not be tolerated. Accept your subjugation or else.
Yeah.
And so here's why I'm doing this, Mr. Dix. I'm doing this because I'm aware of that if freedom fighters who came before me did not refuse to give in to terror, then I wouldn't be here. Quite frankly, I'd be in chains. If freedom fighters who came before me did not engage in the fight back, then buses would still be segregated. Women would be relegated to the home. LGBT folks would be cast to the shadows. But thank God united to fight back and pursue freedom. And so the question before each and every one of us in our time, in this moment, is what are we going to do to fight back against racism, against war, against climate change, against mass deportation, against transphobia, against Islamophobia, against patriarchy.
Yes.
The list goes on and on and on. What are we going to do in our time, in this moment? And so for me, I view the actions in October as a concerted effort of all freedom-loving people concerned with justice, concerned with liberation, and concerned with revolution from these systems of oppression that seek to keep us down, to come out united, with purpose, and with a militant love to say, please repeat after me, down with unjust police terror.
Down with unjust police terror.
Down with white supremacy.
Down